In this video, we'll be talking about the past, present, and future of the F or the C256 Jr product. You notice I stumbled there when I said F and then C. So to start with, the original product came about following the C256U Plus system that's definitely released sometime in, I think, 2020, 2021 timeframe. And it was really a call for a product that she felt would be easier to produce, less expensive. She could sell to consumers for a reasonable amount of money. And it had a lot of things that people really wanted. For instance, a 6502 processor, a 6522 interface adapter, PS2 keyboard, which just about everybody has one of those, right? Audio out, stereo out, a bunch of other type of audio SID chips, you know, other kind of features built into it. I won't go over the extensive review here. I've covered it before. But this original development board, which became a shipping product sometime maybe 6 or 9 months later, had a couple of upgrades built into it, namely an expansion connector, which was this PCI Express X1 slot. And you could equip that with either, or at least buy optionally a RAM cartridge, 256K. You can buy a flash cartridge. You can put your own code on here and you can treat it like a normal cartridge. And there's also an internal module you can place on there. It does not have a cartridge casing. She also added other things to this board. A couple more headers for things you wanted to wire to it. Mine is equipped this way because this is my development system. So I've got reset switch in the back and a RAM or flash switch on the over here. I've got a hardwired USB connection to my PC. I use that for pushing code across as I assemble code. And that's wired onto a header down here. So anyway, this is what she has been shipping up until about, I'll say 6 months or 9 months ago. And then she pulled it from her store. She was concentrating on different products. It became a chore or a burden, I'll say, to build. And I'll just point at least to this dev board, and I'll tell you why it was problematic. You can see the sheer number of through-hole components make it difficult to build in any kind of quantity, right? Here, this, power connector, some of the edge connectors here, and then some weren't even populated, right? Left to the user to use if they wanted to. But it became quite a bit. However, a lot of people jumped on board with this. I developed, I'll say, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 different pieces of software for it. A lot of them small utilities, but I found, great value in it. And, if she never came out with another system, I never bought another system, there'd be plenty here to keep me busy for the, next couple of years, to be honest. One of the most, I guess, interesting developments on this platform was the ability to pull the processor and install a 65816 processor, which is, 24-bit memory address with 16-bit registers, or you pull the processor and put in an FNX6809, which I talked about briefly in a different video. And the Nitrous 9 release, ported by Boisy Pitre, is OS 9 for the Foenix system. And there's probably a dozen users that are running that today or working on it. So yet another really good use for the F256 platform. But again, she pulled it from a store to concentrate on some of the other products that she was in the middle of developing, which brings us to today. What's next? So I'm going to, before I jump into that, and this is not necessarily a product reveal because she published this, I don't know, a week or two ago on her Patreon channel and then posted more details of it on the Discord forum. But I'm going to talk about a couple of aspects of the product which I find interesting, at least from my perspective. But first, let's jump into, I want to share with you something I did with my other junior, which is to put it inside of one of those MyRetro PC cases in an interesting form that you'll probably find immediately recognizable. So here it is. This is, it says Commodore 64, but of course it's not a Commodore 64. It says it's made by Commodore or has the Commodore seal of approval, but that's all licensing, I believe. I think it's actually made by MyRetroComputer, at least that's the company that put it together. A guy named Sean, I'm going to say Donahue, I might have that wrong, out of England. spent, I think, many years on this. And I believe he took the project over from another person that took it to a certain level and then, eventually pulled out of it. But this was done through a Kickstarter. The box is beautiful, just like the original. And I think probably 20% of the money, the cost of this thing went into the box. I just wanted to show you what you get here. You get a box. Inside of it, you get a keyboard built with Cherry MX switches. They're blue. I bought the bare bones version, which is essentially this part here. Comes with a side plate, a media carrier, which I'm not using, built-in fan, and a finger guard. This pretty nice keyboard and the clamshell. So that's essentially it. There's something called a fixing kit, which is nothing more than a couple of kind of tie downs and some hardware. It says high quality retro style keycaps. I'll agree with him there, but let me show it to you. Here we are. This is my build. I took it and drilled holes in it and added some things, as you'll see in just a moment. But from the first look at it, it's bread bin. It looks like it's the right color beige. Nice brown keyboard. Function keys, not F1 through F5 or F10. These are the media control keys that you would see on a PC. If you want regular function keys, you'll have to get them through the numeric keys, 1 through 10, and then on through the plus sign for F12. And there's a function key modifier you hold down to get those keys. Otherwise, it's pretty nice. The key switch feel, blue is not my thing. I like the brown switches, but pretty good. I'd like to see the guy from Keyboard Reviews review this and see what he has to say about it. He probably won't like it as much as I do. I would, not to be nitpicky here, but I would like the keycaps themselves to be a little bit higher quality. I don't know if these are, I don't think these are double shot. They're probably stamp printed. The letters are big, just like the original, but of course there's no Petsky keys on there, right? There's no ASCII kind of character graphic characters on there. This is again made for people who want to use PCs. This LED doubles as a power switch, although I don't like the power switches like that. So I'll show you what I did to mine. And this is loose. I didn't tighten the screws up, so I'll be holding this together in my hand. But essentially, I put a MIDI connector in here. This is the barrel jack for power. This is the fan it comes with. I'm not using it. This is the normal PC, the ITX Mini backplate that you would normally see on the back of a PC. This is just the Foenix format. I bought a screen and cut it so that the ports came through. We'll cover those, but I like a physical toggle switch. I brought the headphone jack out to the side, and that's about it. So I'll pull the cover off just to show you in here. I've already disconnected the cables, but for mine anyway, for my build, there are two cables. There's a cable that goes to the power switch, which I'm using as a reset button. So this momentary depress will reset the computer. I'm not using the LED just yet. And then the keyboard, which comes out to USB on this 5-pin connector that would go onto a header on a PC. I built a little cable to a USB-A type, and then I built this little adapter here that converts. There's a microcontroller on here, but it converts from USB to PS2. This is something one of the guys on the Foenix forum kind of pointed me to the GitHub. I downloaded the Gerber files, Centroid file for placement, the bill of materials, and I worked with one of these, China-based PCB manufacturing outfits to build me 10 of them. So if somebody wants or has a need for one, reach out to me and I'll get you one if you like. Probably work something out. They're inexpensive. It comes with, at least the build is supposed to have two PS2 connections on it. One that works for mouse and one that works for keyboard. And it'll convert from, the firmware anyway, will convert from a USB to a PS2 mouse or from a USB to a serial mouse. I'm using it just for a USB keyboard. So this goes into CN4 on the Junior board. On the Junior, by the way, this is a Rev BOB, which is the second of 3 revisions. And on the BOB, there was a single port on the back. And this was typically for a keyboard. If you want to put a mouse on here, you'll need to wire up this port on the BOC maybe, I forget the number, but on the 3rd gen Junior board, which is tan in color, There's also a single jack, but it's wired in such a way that you can have a kind of a pigtail and have a mouse on one and joystick, and sorry, mouse on one and keyboard on the other. What I did though is I wired into here, and thankfully the kernel, microkernel, sees this as the keyboard connector, since the keyboard's connected to it, and that leaves the back for the mouse when I want to use it. So it turns out to be a nice, neat solution. From a clearance perspective, everything fits well in here. I had to get a right angle adapter for the Pico power supply. You know, $5 or $8 on Amazon. My MIDI setup here that you've seen before is as before, except I pulled the 5-pin DIN and I wired it to this, you know, kind of permanent fixture on the back. The Dream chip is just as it was. I have my power switch wired to this front connector. And everything else is as you see it. So pretty straightforward. It was, I don't know if I'll call it a satisfying build, but it worked out well. I'll now tell you two things I don't like about the this MyRetroComputer, and two things I do like about it. Things I like about it are the case quality, at least at appearances. The plastic is fairly strong. The color is right. It took a while to drill through, right? The couple holes that I drilled in the case. So that's all real nice. But the thing I don't like about it is that I pulled this keyboard off to have a look at it, and the standoffs which hold it, I think 3 of them were split because the hardware put in there was made too tight by the people assembling it. It didn't really cause a problem. I was able to screw it back in there tight enough, and it's in there securely. But you know, when you see something like that, it really makes you take pause. Of course, I'm handy enough. I could fix it. I'd probably put some epoxy in there, use different screws if I needed to. But you've got, you know, 6 of these holding in place, and with a couple of them kind of, you know, on the verge of being stripped, that could be a problem. So I wasn't thrilled with that. On the positive side, though, this metal plate is super heavy, and the keyboard, the PCB anyway, looks real nice. It's actually made in America, which is interesting. This is made in by TG3 Electronics in Kenosha, Wisconsin, USA. And I guess they ship these to China where the soldering takes place. I'm not even sure. But one way or another, they got it to us for a relatively good price. I think it may have been like $160, $180 for this. And I'll compare it to a WASD brand. I have one right here. So the WASD keyboard, which also has Cherry MX switches, I have brown switches in here. Might have cost, you know, $200. And I think this one maybe cost $160 or $140. I got it in some kind of special end of year. I like these keycaps better, but clearly they're not the same kind of dome shaped as the MyRetro. So, you know, take it or leave it. It's all about choices, and you know, this is a pretty good product if you want to do something like what I did here. So I mentioned one thing I do like, one thing I don't like. The second thing that I do like about it is the fact that, you know, everything in one is of great utility for me. I have spoken about this aspect of, you know, retro computing on my channel before. It's hard to keep everything organized and in one place and have it accessible such that you can, you know, hook it up and use it with just a couple of wires. And that's what this gives me. So with just plugging in a barrel jack on here, I don't necessarily always do MIDI, and one connector for the video onto the back here, I'm good to go. And you know, I don't have joystick ports on here yet. I'm probably gonna wire that to the right plate, which is where the headphone jack is right now. But you know, it's good utility, a nice compact case, and it's certainly the nostalgic element to it, which is you know, something you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. The last thing I don't like about it is this media bay on the right side. You can see the lights inside here. It came as an open vacant slot, and I guess maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention to the Kickstarter. He was selling separately a tray, or at least some kind of a panel that goes across here, and it was sold out. So that's kind of lousy. I'll fashion something and put it there. But anyway, spoken enough about this. I'll put a link in the description to buy this. You can still get them, I believe. I'll put a link to Perifractic's video, which covers it from quite a different angle. And now we'll move on to kind of the main event. Okay, so back again. Here's my oldest Junior, and here's the newest Junior. It's called the F256 Jr, the second. And well, there it is. Tiny, 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 tiny. This isn't necessarily a reveal or a product announcement, of course. I'm just doing this on my own. But you know, it's this was announced a week or so ago on Stephanie's channel, on her Patreon channel, and she's posted tons of details about it online. But for those who haven't seen it, here it is, palm of the hand, you know, actually. And it's got a lot that this has, or that the F256 had when she had it available, and it's got more. It's got a lot that the F256 K2 has. And I'll point out just a few of those, get my official pointing device here. To start with, it's got a, I think it's a micro USD, whatever the smaller one is. It has two of them, just like the K2 has. So you have one with kind of user software, one on the back that may be the system software. It has a small battery for the real-time clock, which is a different form factor than a 2032. But you can just, you know, spot and notice immediately the sheer density of all these components on here. It still has a actual WDC microprocessor, although it's a 65816 this time, not a 6502, but that'll boot into a 6502. The clock is still 6.29 megahertz, so it'll be compatible with the others, at least from software perspective. It has an onboard PS2 connector, a single connector here. It's powered by USB-C, and it has an on-off switch, which is handy. It has a, this is I think an 8-pin DIN or 9-pin DIN connector, which goes to Stephanie's, I think it's called 4SNY, not SNY. It's 4, I'm not sure the name of it, but it's essentially, it's a breakout box that you can hook up 4 Super NES or 4 NES controllers to. And that's optional, but that plugs into here. Video is this tiny connector here, which is it's not a mini display port, but it's a certain type of standard port, which will break out to a DVI and possibly a different kind of video. It's got a WizNet, I believe, chip on here with this Wi-Fi. You can optionally plug in an antenna. Although, of course, if you mount it on a wall, as I will, you don't need the antenna. I don't plan on enshrouding it in any kind of metal. It's got other connections for line out and line in, I believe. Inside of the FPGA, which is this tiny Vicky, the second, she calls it. It has two, similar to the Ks, has two PSG instances, two SID instances, and a bunch of other tricks up its sleeve. All of the graphics and all the things that you're probably used to. I won't talk about it too much more about what you can connect to it, and obviously a headphone jack, there's a reset button, there's USB and other things. But I want to talk about this connector here, because this is a maybe a 38-pin connector, I'm not sure. I've got a spec on it I'll pull up, and we can talk about that further. But this does what the original Junior did, for at least for me, was enable me to do things that I wasn't planning on doing originally with a retro computer, which is wiring up, like for instance, in this case, a Commodore keyboard, or a tone generator, or via the at least on my other boxes, my other Juniors, this feather footprint, which I use to create a MIDI interface, or to wire in that Dream chip as I did, or to wire in a reset button, etc., etc. There's tons of headers on this thing. Here, because of the real estate, she was able to bring a bunch of it out to this header, which you may wire up yourself, or buy what she calls hats, right? Like they use in other types of products. A hat that would kind of bolt onto here with some standoffs. That'll do, varied things. And I'll jump into that real quick. We'll talk about it. Last thing I just want to mention, at least on the back of this, is how impossibly tiny. I think this is, I don't have it in front of me. And it is a standard size. It might be a micro, in ITX micro, but I have it on my laptop. I'll bring it up in just a second. But I wanted to say that this, because of its absence of through-hole components, even the header connector is extremely, I won't say easy, but it really streamlines the build for Stephanie. So she'll be able to have these produced, I think, entirely out, from a production shop. Not have to worry about it herself, which means that she can have them produced in quantity, using all the kind of modern components that are easily accessible for these shops to build on, and the cost will be relatively low cost, lower than this. So I think her costs, and I'm just guessing here, are somewhere between, or at least she'll have them selling for $175 or $200, where this, in the F version, got up to say $220, $230, $240, because the CPU was optional. If you wanted a dip, 40-pin dip, you have to pay an extra $20, I believe. So there's various different flavors of this, the way it was packaged. So here you get quite a bit more. including a Dream chip, including MIDI through this port, including a 65816 processor, a lot more memory. So let me bring up my laptop and we'll talk about some of the specs more thoroughly. Okay, let's start with the size. The form factor, I at least showed it to you. It is indeed Pico ITX. Hard to remember all the differences. Mini was the original Junior. Pico ITX 72 by 100 millimeters. So it's absolutely tiny. And I think that a Raspberry is somewhere in between here and the mobile ITX form factor, but I could be wrong on that. So it's, you know, about as small as you would possibly want. Moving on to the connector I spoke about previously. It has 5 volts and 3.3 volts on here. There's ground. Then you've got a whole pile of things you can connect to it. 2 joysticks, so it's a normal 1 button, 4-direction joystick. There's the Joy 0 and Joy 1. There's a serial port, which is a simple 3-wire affair. So you've got receive and transmit on there. Then you've also got connectivity to this. I think this is some kind of ESP product, Room, which has looks from the looks of it anyway, transmit and receive, RTS, which is a request to send, and the DTR data terminal ready. These are handshaking signals. And then separately, MIDI in and out, left and right, sorry. I don't know what the R stands for, certainly not left and right, but there's MIDI in and MIDI out. Then you move down here to SPI, an SPI interface, which you can use for whatever whatever you feel like. Buy some of the M5 stack components. But you've got, MISO and MOSI, clock, etc. And then there are 4 lines which are not used. And I think she says reserved. But there's been some discussion about this on the Discord forum, that these are indeed unused. So quite a bit here, and you can wire it as you like. And, I do plan on wiring it as I like. So we'll see what people do with these things. And let's have a quick look at the VLSI chip. Let's see from here. I've got it, I think, on a different tab. Yeah, it's right here, this way. There we go. To start with, I want to point out that the general MIDI specification, at least for level 1, is, acoustic instruments from the bass drum at key number 35 up to the open triangle at 81. I demonstrated this on, I guess, a couple of videos at least. Let me move over to the specification for this chip. So the VS1053B is the chip. On the spec sheet, it looks like an 8, but it's a B. And this is, it's a multi-function audio circuit. It's about the same size as the Wolfson codec chip in terms of its footprint on the board. And you'll see it on the next slide. But it's got just piles of decode capabilities. It's got some, WMA formats, FLAC, MP3. The list goes on and on. I believe that programming it is a little bit challenging, or at least different. So we'll have to wait for somebody to kind of, dip their toe in the water and show how to best use it. But I at least just wanted to point out that it's got all of the general MIDI instruments you're used to. So you've got from 1 acoustic piano, grand piano, down to 128, which is the sound effect bank, which is the gunshot. And then it's got the percussion instruments, which I guess start a little bit lower in number than the acoustic bass drum at 35. I think 35 to 81 is the standard, right? The acoustic bass drum instrument 35, one note, key number 35, MIDI note, up to open triangle 81. But then they go on the shaker, jingle bell, a bunch of these other instruments. And they also start earlier in the key sequence. Scratch, pull, scratch, push, sticks, square, click, etc. So I just wanted to cover that. We'll move up quickly to the spec sheet, which he has posted as well, and I'll put a link to it. Not going to read through it, but it's got a meg of SRAM. You can read it for yourself. And here's the kind of some of the direct, pictures. Mine is just a printout of the rendered circuit board, but here you can see the actual picture of the device. She's already got a prototype built and has been kind of showing it as she gets to the next stage of kind of software development for it. But it's real close to being available. It is indeed a micro card, micro SD. Her serial port has 4 channels on it, by the way. One of them is the JTAG channel, which is used for programming the FPGA. It's got the normal debug port that she has. It has a system serial port, and then there's a serial port that goes to the HAT expansion. So even without building your own and wiring your own thing up, there's some way to get access to this, I believe, either through this USB power connector possibly, or maybe through some other connector, not even sure. And here again, as I kind of was grasping at the name of it, it's called the FNX4N4S. So that's for the Nintendo interface. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching and tuning in, and we'll be back later with more content.